The number of videos, each video will be about some aspects of our possible work with posterior teeth. First few pieces will be about modeling process, how to reproduce ridges, and in which sequence, on which things and effects we need to pay our attention and keep under control during the modeling of different teeth. Actually, all teeth we described in the first half. So that's the first video. Restoration of first maxillary molar with a cavity of not extremely big size. Application of the adhesive system, and then SDR, some portion of bulk fill in there. Spreading with fissura. Then, as the first layer, as you can see, this case I used SphereTech Ceramics SphereTech A2. As the first layer, I usually fill the excesses of free space under the cusp in the defect, because under the cusp the defect size is the biggest usually, with some over big free space inside, and it's necessary to fill it at first with some separate portion before doing the ridges themselves, because in case we would not fill that areas with the portion before applying the ridges, in case of ridge applied, that portion with which we wanted to make a modeling of the ridge, the portion will be too small. It will be swallowed by the excessive free space inside. Stop to be visible. We will have to add more and more volume of composite to the same place, and the final portion we'll have to work with will be very big, and the bigger portion is, the less controllable the process of modeling. That's the simple truth we need to constantly keep in mind, but that's not the biggest problem. Actually, the biggest problem is that after filling the occlusal surface with a bigger number of ridges, after applying central ridges, after applying of some part of some number of side ridges, we will face with a complicated situation when for finishing the modeling we need to apply ridges in some very narrow and very big areas, and the possibility of thorough adapting the portions into such complicated specific narrowed area will be very inconvenient, and we will have to put the composite somehow there in the deep areas of resulted space between the ridges, with the high probability of getting air pores and bubbles inside. And in order to avoid it, in order to make the process of modeling easy and more controllable on all stages in the beginning and thereafter, it's better to fill that areas with the volume, but of course with saving sufficient depth for getting a fissure of necessary depth and the bottom level. So now you see application of portions for reproducing the ridges themselves. You can start with any ridge you want. It's not that big difference from which ridge you start the modeling, but it should be central ridge. We need to finish modeling and positioning of central ridges first, because as you remember, central ridges are more important functionally and getting higher to the upper point of the cusp. They forming a pike point, which sometimes is very important, and usually central ridge located and getting the biggest area. It's dominates comparing with the nearby side ridges. And I told you on the pictures of presentation before, when we think together how to manage the free space of our cavity, planning a future morphology. I told you how to do that management of horizontal displacement, possible displacement of reproducible ridges. But what we can do with the volume, how can we verify and evaluate volume and its efficiency, or maybe excessiveness of the volume? There are actually not that much ways. One of the way basing on the instruments using specific instruments, the working part of which located under the angle of 90 degree to the holder. And for example, one of the instrument I widely use in these for this purpose is fissura, having exactly that configuration I need. And the essence of the method is that we need to place the portion at first, adapt it to the surface. Then we need to get a mirror, take a mirror and get the view from the side perspective, from distal side or from medial side. Of course, we can do it only with using of the mirror. And by looking on tooth with applied but not cured portion, we need to take that mentioned instrument, for example fissura, and locate it under exactly that angle which leftovers of enamel has. So you see that, that part of enamel here, or working with the buccal cusps, we will try to adjust the instrument under the angle these enamel parts has, or these, and of course we can objectively get the same angle only by taking a side perspective of view. And since we get the necessary angle, we just need to do motions from medial to distal side, and this way we will be able to spread possible excesses to sides. Then if the excesses were too significant, we need to remodel or remove them, and then would better to overcome this procedure once again, and final volume will be adjusted quite precise. Of course, this method basing on our skill, basing on the manual control, and it's not always possible to do, because not in all cases, especially not in cases of really big sized defects, we have something like enamel leftovers of showing occlusal surface with its angle that we can catch with instrument. It's not always like that. Sometimes the defect is bigger, sometimes we don't have counter reference. These cases we need to just work differently in another method, and later I'll show you which methods exactly. So you see the point when all the central regions were reproduced. So now we need to apply side ridges. Same process with the same characteristics, but we need to be careful. Carefully follow the places. Do not exaggerate volume. Keep controlling ourselves in our action and sufficiency or excessiveness of volume with the method of instrument I showed you. And the process more boring because the number of side ridges 2 times bigger than the central one. But generally, the essence of the actions are the same as for the central ridges. Once again, you should not follow some specific sequence and reproduce some particular ridges at first. Just do that ridges you feel more, you understand at first, and if there is some area which is not very understandable for you, just leave it as it is. Leave it as it is, and start to work with some other areas more understandable, that you feel better. And when the chewing surface, when the occlusal surface will be filled with bigger number of elements, that complicated area will solved and will become more clear by itself. It's quite frequently happened like that in my own practice as well. So one by one, the ridges placing on their position. More frequently I use a paintbrush, as you can see, because after adjusting the central ridges on its place, the spaces between them will be much more narrow, and such instrument as micro brush very convenient for shaping, but it's not thin enough for shaping in more narrow area. That's why paintbrush may be more useful such cases, such areas. Not only big one, also we have a small one. We produce small brushes which actually is angled and very convenient for adjusting the elements in case of posterior restorations. And the last side ridges of distal palatal cusp. Keep in mind that their position is limited by that obliquely running main palatine fissure. Do not exaggerate the length of that distal palatine ridges. It's quite widespread and very frequent mistake, as I can see in works of many doctors posting Facebook or Instagram. Well, as you can see, I apply ridges one by one, but without getting ridges of but without getting contact between the ridges. Some free space between the ridges was left, and it was left deliberately by the purpose, because the method of small increments, small portions, not very convenient for a possible corrections, because if you made some mistakes on the way of modeling, on the way of shaping, the only possible option for you to solve the mistake is probably to cut the anatomical elements out, and starting from the beginning. It's not very convenient, because then you will have to once again to implement an adhesive preparation. So it's possible, but it will complicate the work highly. So that's why I gradually bring the ridges into the contact one another, slowly, initially saving some free space between them, and then so this way I left some free space for that process of final modeling, which I implement frequently with more bleach whitish shade, imitating that hyper mineralization of the ridges near the fissure.